Hey friends, and welcome into A Walk Through the Word, Daily Bread with Crystal Fry. I am your host, Crystal Fry, and this week's guest conversation is one that definitely has the potential to impact a big part of your life: your money. My guest this week is Bob Lotich, author of the book Simple Money, Rich Life. Bob found himself at his breaking point in his early 20s, overwhelmed by debt and stranded 1,000 miles from home with only $7 to his name. After crying out to God for wisdom and discovering a simpler and far more effective approach to money, he reached a level of financial freedom he never dreamed possible, having a paid-off house by age 31 and even reaching a personal goal of giving $1 million by age 40. For the last 15 years, he shared his best lessons with over 52 million readers and listeners on his award-winning blog, SeedTime.com, and SeedTime Money Podcast. We talk about that rough start and what led him to finally turn to God for help with his finances, and we also talk about the radical steps of faith that God has called Bob and his wife Linda to in their giving. I hope you enjoy this episode, and be sure to check out the show notes to connect with Bob on his website, grab your copy of his new book, Simple Money, Rich Life, and to check out his podcast. All right, friends, here we go. God's word is powerful. The missing link is our identity in Christ. When we know who we are and who He created us to be, that is when we can truly walk in freedom. You are never alone. There is hope, and that hope is Jesus Christ. Bob, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here. I'm so excited about all of the things that we're going to talk about today to share with our listeners. But before we get started, for any of our listeners who may not be familiar with you, give us a little bit of an introduction and tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, so short story, I'll give you the condensed version, but in 2007, I was a mess financially, and I was on my way out, taking my first steps out of that, and I decided to start a blog sharing about what I was learning about money, and particularly the intersection of money, like practical, and then the fact that the Bible actually had something to say about money, and this combination was fascinating to me, and so I was just sharing about that in this blog. Long story short, by 2008, I was doing that full time, which was very, very unexpected to me. And from that point, I've just continued to really make a living from the internet, sharing in a variety of different forms. Like, we have our own podcast, my wife and I, where we talk about this topic. We've written a couple books, have a bunch of courses helping people go deeper in all these things. And so I've just been doing this for the last now 15, 17 years or so. And yeah, so it's been a crazy wild ride, but that's a brief overview of me.
Before we dive into your new book, Simple Money, Rich Life, I get to ask my favorite question, which is, how has your faith impacted your life?
Yeah. So I guess going back to, I don't know, it's just kind of been really since I was about 21 years old. That's when everything started to change for me. And so I was kind of raised Catholic. And then I think as a young teenager, I committed my life to Jesus. And then, but it was just like one toe in the water type of walk with God, not real committed. And then it was when I was age 20, I felt like God called me on a sabbatical to kind of break away from my old pattern of living and to get alone with Him. And so I went on the sabbatical, went down to a Florida beach town, and just spent 7 months there, just without any friends, just hanging out with God, every day, reading the Bible, walking the beach, listening to the Bible or different messages, sermons, or whatever, like just a very intense period of, just growth with the Lord. And from that, everything has changed. And it was out of that God revealed to me how much of a mess I was financially, because I had some pride, just kind of pretending like I wasn't a mess financially. And so He revealed that to me, which I didn't know at the time would actually be part of my calling, or a significant part of what he's called me to do in my life is help others in this area. And so that's kind of where it all began, like in terms of my faith shifting everything. But over the years, there's just been so many different things that God has led us to and through, and challenges and opportunities and the miracles we've gotten to see. And, so it's like, it's so intertwined. There'd be no way for us to separate our life and our faith at this point. Like they're just so merged together, yeah.
And I think that's really how God intended for our faith to be.
Yeah.
I talk a lot on this podcast about the importance of the relationship that you have with God, and that it is a personal, he wants to be involved in all aspects of your life, not just
Yeah.
big decisions, but he wants to be involved in everything. And one area that you have a lot of expertise is your faith and your finances,
Yeah.
and where those two roads cross, and how they, like you said, the Bible has instructions about what you're supposed to do with your money and how you're supposed to handle it. And so how did that transform into really being able to help other people? Like, what was your journey like? You said that God showed you, hey, Bob, you're kind of a mess. And, let's knock the ego down a little bit and understand that you're a mess and I'm here to help. What did that journey look like for you?
Yeah. So for me, it required me, because, God knows me well. He knew what it would take for me to change. And so it required me just kind of doing enough dumb things to getting to that point where I had to cry out to him, like, because I'm so desperate. Like, I need help. I don't know what I've been doing. Like, what I've been doing hasn't been working. So, like, God, if you have a better plan, I'm all ears and I'm ready to dive into that. So that's kind of where it started. And through that, I just felt like, he was just revealing things from his word, very much just in terms of the wisdom of how to manage money better. And so, I remember reading through Proverbs, doing the one proverb a day thing. I did that for years, just over and over and over again. And as you just let that wisdom just begin to seep into your being and how you operate and how you think, like it just really begins to change things. And so what that looked like for us practically is, first step, really just trying to pay off as much debt as we could, because we had accumulated so much debt. I had, and then I married my wife, Linda, and then we both brought our debt together. And so we had this big ball of debt coming out. But one of the things that I think God has challenged us on multiple times, when we've had big financial goals that we were trying to achieve, he has always invited us to give more in those situations. And it's so counterintuitive. And like, it's one of those things. And every single time I'm like, really, this seems like this is going backwards. This is going the opposite direction, but I've had it happen enough. I've had the privilege of hearing from countless readers and listeners to our podcast and stuff who have shared their own stories of this. And I think it's just so interesting, because it's like, it's been these big steps of faith when he's called us to begin giving more while we're trying to pay off our debt. Like, it just doesn't make any sense, but we've seen him come through over and over again. And each time, like, we shave years off of the process, which doesn't make any sense, but we've seen God do it so many times that now we're like, all right, God, whatever crazy thing you're asking us to do, like, I'm ready. Like, let's do it.
I love the way you say that, all right, God, whatever crazy thing you're calling me to next, hey, I'm all in for it. Because there are many times when people shy away from doing something that will ultimately become massive for them, because they're afraid to do that crazy thing that God said, because it doesn't make sense to them. 14 months ago, God called me to leave my job, and I had a 6-figure income and, was largely supporting our household. And God was like, no, it's time for you to go. And I was like, oh,
wow.
No, it's not. Like, how am I going to pay the mortgage? Just, and all of these things. But he made me so uncomfortable in my job. Like, my health started to take an impact. My hair started to fall out. He made me so uncomfortable. He allowed me to be so uncomfortable that the only option I had was, okay, God, if you want me to leave, I'm going to leave. You're going to you're going to make this happen, right? Like,
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that. Like, cause, yeah, back when I kind of started this blogging thing, it was similar for me in that he just kicked me out of the boat. Like, I just get laid off. Like, our entire company got bought out, and they're like, "We don't need your department anymore." So I got laid off, and I started looking for another job. And I felt like God's like, "Nope, I want you to not look for another job. I want you to become a full-time blogger." And I'm like, this is 2008, right? Like, most people don't know what a blog is. Like, no one's making a living blogging type of thing. And so, anyway, yeah, it was one of those things. I mean, this is always the thing. It's like we think we're smarter than God. We think his way seems foolish and silly, but it's never the case. It's never works that way. And God always knows. He can always see farther than we can. And so I'm just absolutely convinced that those crazy things, like when you know that it's God, is absolutely the safest thing that you can actually do,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you've turned all of that knowledge, as you said, into several books, but your most recent one, Simple Money, Rich Life.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So this book is kind of the summation of our last 17 years, my wife, Linda, and I. It's based around a John Wesley quote that has kind of guided our financial life, which is basically this. John Wesley said, "I earn as much as I can. I reduce my expenses as much as I can. And I do that so that I can give as much as I can." And so that's just kind of been our driving motivation for how we've handled our money. I am not someone who's steered away from earning more because I think sometimes in the church, particular denominations, lean, I think, too heavily into the don't make a lot of money or you can get yourself in trouble. It's like there's no doubt there's warnings about wealth and how we handle money all throughout the New Testament. There's something there. But the common denominator that I see all throughout the Bible is that it's always about our heart. God is always after our heart. And so the money is just the inanimate thing. Like, that's not the issue. It's our heart response to the money. Are we going to serve mammon or are we going to serve God? And when we are using money to serve God, then we can be a force in the kingdom. Then we can maximize kingdom impact, and we can make an eternal impact, and we can do these things, and we can, just live a life where we're using our dollars to rob hell and to get more people into heaven. And that's what I'm after, and that's what we're trying to help people do in the book. And so we have it broken down in 4 parts where we help people earn more money from their current situation without having to get a side hustle, whether they're a business owner, freelancer, whatever. And then we help them spend smarter, more efficiently, with less time spent, because I'm just like an automation nerd, and I nerd out on how do we get these big wins without making a dramatic effect on our lifestyle. We're not the like penny pitching, hyper frugality type. We're the let's be really smart about how we save money so we can spend more on the things we actually love and enjoy and are important to us. And then the third part of it is how do we have more fun giving than we ever thought possible? Because again, that's been our journey. Like, I used to hate giving. Like, I had no desire to do it. I felt like I might as well throw money in the trash. Like, it's like, it seemed like there was no benefit to it. And now, like, I finally come to believe that when Jesus said this whole thing of it's more blessed to give than to receive, like, I finally believe him now. I didn't believe him for so long. And our, and giving has become such an important part of our lives, and we've learned how to do it and actually have a blast and have so much fun with it. And that doesn't mean that there aren't moments of sacrificial giving where it does hurt a little bit, but even in that, just like we're talking about, stepping out in that, we can know that God's got something really cool for us on the other side of that, and that it's not just to hurt us and to make our lives difficult, So anyway, so that's what we're trying to lead people on, our readers, through this book. And we just designed it to be, so many people think that you have to be this big financial expert to be successful financially. And that's just not the truth. Like, I worked in that industry for so long. And so we created a book where it's like, if you're not someone who read a bunch of financial books, like, that's great. This is the one book, that you can read, apply, and then get on with your life and be in a much better spot 5 years from now.
I love that so much. I cannot wait for our listeners to go out and get their own copy. And we will have a link to where they can find that book down in the show notes, as well as a link to your podcast, SeedTime Money. Now, what do you talk about? I mean, I kind of feel like I know what you talk about on there, but what do you talk about on your podcast?
Yeah. So a lot of different stuff. So we talk about some of the mindset stuff, some of the strategy stuff, but we also get into nuts and bolts. Like, I love, getting down and dirty with the hacks and the things that are happening here and the real things you can listen to and actually take this and go use it right now and save $100 this month. Like I love that type of thing. And so, yeah, we're talking about all of that, and it's my wife and I. And so we're very, lighthearted, and
Hey.
most people say that we tend to be a good bit different than most financial gurus or experts that they've heard, just in terms of our, I don't know, just to not take ourselves too seriously and to have fun with this topic, and to just make it simple. Like it doesn't need to be complicated, and so we work really hard to do that.
Yeah, simple is good. To
Yeah,
me, simple is good.
yeah.
We
Most people, yeah,
overcomplicate so much in this life. Simple is good. Now, you and your wife have done something really amazing. You talk about giving and how you really didn't necessarily want to and didn't
yeah,
really feel that it had a lot of benefit, but that actually has transitioned into you and her achieving a pretty lofty goal.
yeah.
You want to tell our listeners that when I read it, I was totally and completely blown away by seeing this massive achievement. So I'm going to
Yeah.
let you tell it, but share with the audience what this
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. So, the long story short, well, let me step back and say that we came from very middle class upbringings. My dad was a blue collar worker, who worked with his hands all day. And Linda's family, but yeah, just very middle class Missouri family. Um, and that's our background. That's our world. That's where we come from. And so there was a point in my early career, kind of when I was struggling, I went and met with this life coach, and he kind of forced me in our conversations to kind of set some goals. And it was very, very uncomfortable for me. At the time, I was earning $35,000 a year. And he pressed me to kind of set some goals in terms of earning how much I wanted to earn, and in finding out what was important to me. Giving was a part of that. Had kind of become something like along those lines. And he said, I want you to write some goals down. And so in all this, I ended up setting this goal, 5-year goal of giving away $500,000. Now, at that time, I was making $35,000 a year. We were giving probably $3,500 a year, if that. And so this idea of giving away $500,000 was so absurd and insane to me that it just, I couldn't even reconcile it. It's like this is just stupid. Like, why would I even do this? And I remember walking away from that meeting with him and just being like, this is just the dumbest thing I've ever done. And it's painful because it feels like it's a spotlight on my inadequacies and how limited I am and how I'm never going to be able to accomplish this. And it just felt like a joke. And so what was so interesting about that is somehow there was something with God and mustard seed of faith and all these pieces. I don't know how it all worked together, but what I do know is it wasn't 5 years later, but 8-9 years later, we reached that goal of giving away $500,000. And then 2 or 3 years after that, we reached the goal of giving away $1 million. And which is still absolutely mind blowing to me, because where I come from, that doesn't happen. People don't do that, and, it's not like we were born with a silver spoon and trust fund babies, anything it just wasn't a thing. So what's cool about this is that it's so clearly God, so he gets all the glory and the credit for it, and the number is just a number, but for us, it was so significant. And I think just it was something for us to just see such a visual, stark representation of, look at what God just did, because there's no way he could have done this, So when Jesus almost sunk Peter's boat, with the fish, that type of thing, where it's Peter had been fishing all night and caught nothing, and then Jesus, yeah, go back out, and then he almost sinks his boat with fish. It's you can't that's not because I'm a good fisherman. I didn't want to go. I thought it was a terrible idea. This is all God. And so that was the thing for us. And so the $1 million is just this cool milestone where Linda and I got to celebrate, because we know where we came from. We know our past, we know where we were, and we have watched God bring us along this journey. And so that's just been just a fun, exciting thing that we got to celebrate.
Yeah, I think that is just incredible. And like you said, it's one of those things where there's no denying that was the hand of God. That's just kind of one of those things where when people are very much doubting and they want evidence, they want proof,
Yeah.
they want, they have questions and all of these things. that's one of those amazing things where you can point them to
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
say, you want proof? You want evidence? Here it is. Here you go. Because this is
Yeah.
not something that I could have done on my own. This is not
Yeah.
something that would have happened just by myself. This is a physical representation of the hand of God moving and allowing us to be able to do this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and just giving anyone listening some more context of kind of how that played out within that. So this is what's interesting about reaching that goal is that required some steps of bold obedience in order to get there. You know what I mean? Like God wanted to do the thing, but like we had to take some steps that were uncomfortable. One of which was when I was 31 at this point. So a few years past, all this stuff. He called us to start giving our age as a percentage of our income. So at that point, we were probably giving 10, 11%. And I felt like God said, I want you to start giving your age. So give 31% through this year. And that was, man, that was a bold step, because it's like I didn't know if how the math was going to work. I didn't know if we are going to be able to pay our bills and like all the stuff. But Lynn and I, we both felt like it was God, and so we started doing that, and so we've continued that every year since for the last 10 years, and so now we're up to 41%. And by His grace, we've been able to do that. And there've been, some years that have been tighter than others because that's just a lot of money, but the point is, He sustained us through it all. Like we've been nothing but blessed through this entire time. And we've got to just continually set aside a larger and larger percentage of our money to give every year, which has allowed us to be the hands and feet and to be part of a lot of miracles where He's invited us to give into certain situations and to witness that firsthand. And that's just been so thrilling and so much fun. But that has been a big contributor to reaching that $1 million milestone. That had we not done that, there's no way we wouldn't have been anywhere close, So it was, yeah. So all that to say, like, if God's leading you to something big, if you do have this big goal, and it's something that is of the Lord and He wants it for you, there's probably going to be some bold steps of faith you're going to have to take in order to get there.
Yeah. And that's where that trust really, really comes in.
Yeah.
When you hear it, okay, fine, cool, I heard it. But then when you actually have to put action behind what the word is in doing it, that's where we hesitate. That's where we stop. That's where we aren't able to push ourselves forward because we listen to fear or worry, doubt, all those things. But truly, that's where the provision is. And not just financially, but, all of the other needs that we have as well. The provision comes when we walk in obedience.
Yeah. No, I mean, what you're saying, it reminds me of one of the stories we talk about in the book towards the beginning is Jehoshaphat in 2 Chronicles 20. And they got 3 armies coming up against them. And Jehoshaphat and Judah, they're freaking out. So they start fasting and praying, which is a great first step, by the way, when you have a crisis. And God says, all right, I want you to march down to the battle line and lead with the praisers, lead with the tambourines and all that stuff. And I'm just thinking, what a terrible idea, without a battle plan, just march down there in the morning. But that's the point. That's where you're just saying, it's that you get the instructions and then you have to obey and follow through. And that boldness that they had to step out in faith to do that, not knowing how God was going to come through, because God had promised them He'd take care of it. But then they get down there and they're all dead. They're all dead. All their enemies are already defeated. They don't even have to fight. And then they just get to pick up all the spoils and walk them back. It's just such a cool story.
God led them in with the celebration band because He knew what was waiting for them.
Yeah.
And that is, and especially for me in this particular season of my life, this has become a big running theme, is trusting and really, really trusting and understanding that, He is enough.
Yeah.
And today He has provided me enough for today.
Yeah.
And today is all I have anyway. So, while we're walking along this journey, there's been a constant reminder to me that you have enough for today. Tomorrow will worry about itself. Jesus tells us that, tomorrow will have plenty of troubles for itself. You don't have to worry about that. Don't worry. But today, The reason why this podcast called A Walk Through the Word Daily Bread with Crystal Fry is because it is a daily walk. It is that daily bread. And when we can put our focus on understanding that indeed he is enough and he has provided for you up to this point, what makes you think he's going to stop now?
Yep.
If he's done it up to now, why would he stop? Did he tell you he was just going to pull up stakes and move on? Like, oh, okay, I'm done with you. You can just sit there and figure it out all by yourself. No, he promises to never leave us and never forsake us. So I hope that our listeners are encouraged, because I know that letting go of the control and learning how to simply trust, especially when things are out of your hands, can be a massive struggle. I know it certainly has been for me. And sometimes I kind of feel like he's peeling my fingers back off of the thing that I'm gripping so tightly, saying, if you'll give that to me, if you will let that go and you will give that over to me, I've got something way better for you.
Yep. So good.
Well, Bob, how can our listeners connect with you?
So I think the book is a great starting point. So Simple Money, Rich Life, and that's anywhere. But we have a podcast, so SeedTime Money, like a seed you plant in the ground, SeedTime Money. And then our website, just seedtime.com. And we have a bunch of great free resources over there that people can check out to just help them on their financial journey as well.
Awesome. Do you have any parts, maybe somebody's listened and has thought to them, oh, this all sounds really, really good, but what can I do today? I'm going to order my book off of Amazon, but I got to wait a couple of days for it to get here. What can I do today?
Yeah, I think when it comes to money, I was guilty of this. I talked to so many people who are guilty of this. Like, for some reason, a lot of us tend to separate God from the equation. And we think that, I don't know, God isn't really interested in this, or we just forget to pray, or just forget to invite him into our financial lives. And the truth is, he cares about our financial lives. And I think that he wants us to thrive with the right heart in order to be able to impact other people's lives and to be the hands and feet and do all this stuff. And so I come across people all the time who have a vision, who have a dream. So like I knew somebody who wanted to open pastoral retreat. I knew somebody who wanted to retire early because they wanted to basically go on mission trips every month. I knew someone who wanted to go work for their church, but they had so much debt that they couldn't take the pay reduction, So there are all these different things that we might have and desires and things that God might have put on our heart. And we have the opportunity to use our money to help move in the right direction with that. Or if we're not managing, if we're not steward it wisely, it can even prevent us from doing those things. And I just never want to be someone like that. I want to be someone who stewards and manages what I'm entrusted with well, so God can trust me with whatever, hundreds of millions of dollars, like whatever he wants to do. Like, I want to be in a position worthy. I would just want to be one of those 5 talent stewards from the parable of the talents, where God can trust me with it and know that I'm going to make the most of it. And so that's my encouragement, is that if you don't feel like you are that today, like, you can pray, because he wants to help us become that, So it's not like he's saying you got to figure it out all on your own and get all it right, and all on you and your strength. It's like, I want to help you do that. I want to help you become a better steward so that you can be worthy of managing and stewarding more.
I love that so much. And it is absolutely true. When he knows that he can trust us with a little bit, that is guaranteed that he's going to trust us with more, because we have proven faithful. So I love that encouragement for our listeners today. Bob, it has been such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for spending your time with us. I cannot wait for our listeners to connect with you on your website, to get your book, to read your blog, to listen to your podcast, all of the things. We'll have links down in the show notes for all of those, and how they can get in contact with you to let them know how their journey is going. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure, Crystal. Thank you for having me. It's been an honor. It's been fun. And hope to chat again soon.
Hey friend, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It's my pleasure as always to be here with you. If what you listened to today resonated with you, if you enjoyed listening to the show, do me a favor. Go ahead and like and subscribe to this podcast and leave a review. Those reviews are so helpful. I can't even tell you how much I appreciate each and every single one of them. And go ahead and share this episode out with a friend. Invite them along for a walk through the Word, and let's enjoy that daily bread together. See you tomorrow.